Hey everyone, Solomon here for Wynn Strength, wrapping up the final working week of the Average to Savage 2.0 training program, written by Greg Nuckols over at strongerbyscience.com. Like usual, I'll leave links in the description below to check out the program, highly recommend getting, as well as the Stronger by Science website. Highly recommend checking that out for some amazing evidence-based resources about getting stronger and putting on more muscle. So the 20th week is the final working week. It'll also be my final week of training with the program. There is a 21st week, which is simply another deload week. Rather than deloading, I'm going to take the week completely off before I start a new training phase and a new macro cycle. But that's up to you, whatever direction you want to do. I can't imagine it'll hurt in any way if you decide to work out or take a rest week. I quite like taking a week off completely at the end of a training program. And with the deload week, I can just kill two birds with one stone and not do any work for that final week. So if you've been following along, you know that the third phase has been very successful in terms of progress, meeting rep targets, hitting all the weight recommendations. I've been really stoked about how the progress is going. But what's really cool with this final week is that we've been able to push ourselves just that little bit harder, just because I know that next week I won't be working out at all. So we can really push the limits and really train to pretty much failure at just about failure. I personally like to go to when my form is breaking down in terms of failing points, rather than when I physically can't lift the weight up, just because I'm in the house. There's really no one here to save me other than some pieces of metal that I've set up in terms of safety pins and whatnot. But nevertheless, I like to train up until technical failure rather than physical failure. With that being said, this week has been amazing in terms of results, just because of that extra mental edge that you have by being able to push yourself just that little bit further, knowing that next week you won't have to work out. And that's one thing that I would highly recommend you do in your training when you have a rest week coming up, or a deload week, or some other sort of week off that's coming up. The preceding week to that week off, really go as hard as you can, really push the limits. If you train to failure very minimally over the course of the year, this is one of those few times that you should be doing that, just because you do get that full week of rest and recovery. I don't plan on doing any sort of physical activity for that week. That's how I like to do my rest weeks. There's no cardio, there's no nothing, there's no light workouts. Literally, I'm just gonna not really step into the gym other than to record some videos. However you choose to do that is up to you. And that's been really well in producing some really good last minute push in progress right at the end of this program. And again, I think we've built up a lot of work capacity and a lot of foundational strength to be able to exert some of that and test that just that little bit in this final week, which has been kind of awesome to see. So with that being said, I'll throw over to some training highlights over the course of the week so you can see where I've been progressing. So here we are wrapping up the final week with the final ever squats for this session. Here it was 370 pounds for for a final set of 9, which is kind of awesome. Blew right through the rep target for this week. So we can see that right up until this final phase, that the progression has been going well. All of those adaptations are occurring. I'm really happy with how the squat has been progressing. I did try that high bar earlier in the phase, and that kind of just transitioned back over to my standard low bar style. This is probably going to be the last week that I use the heel squat shoe. As we move on to a new phase, trying to keep everything the same, I will probably be transitioning over to just a regular flat-soled shoe to help address those knee issues and the balance issues I think that might have been an oversight on my part. Here we have the Z press. Again, another great performance here. 11 reps with 120 pounds. These are feeling a lot better as well. I think the form is helping carry over through to the overhead press. This is one of my favorite accessory lifts for the overhead press. One thing to keep in mind is you do want to keep those hamstrings as close to the ground as possible. That'll help stabilize and ground the entire lift and help transfer over to the overhead press too. Here we have deficit deadlifts. This has only been happening for the last 2 weeks now. I didn't think the block pulls were a great movement for hypertrophy, just because you're shortening that range of motion. So we did swap those out in the last 2 weeks here, just to get a bit better of an adaptation. Not something I like to do, but after some thought, 3 weeks in or 4 weeks in, we'll change it over to some deadlifts to get that increased range of motion, to activate more muscle mass for the lift, as well as to mitigate that stress over the course of the week, just because we are trying to shoot for those higher deadlift weight numbers rather than higher block pull numbers here. Moving on to the overhead press, wrapping up again with another solid performance. 165 pounds here for the final rep out set of 9.
I dare say this is a rep PR for my overhead press. One thing I've struggled with in the past has been maintaining breathing and bracing for higher rep volume, and this is definitely showing here. We're able to almost hit 10 with 165 pounds, not a weight that I've been able to do in the past at this higher volume, and I think that's definitely going to help transfer over to the 1 rep max press, just because being able to breathe and brace for this long is definitely going to help when it comes to a single rep. And here we are moving on to the T-bar rows. This is one of those overloading back movements where I think it's okay to use some body English and use that momentum, get some leg drive and hip drive, and really try and move as much weight as possible, just because you are shortening that range of motion and you're able to do that with this heavy weight and the angles everything's working on. Here we are wrapping up with the deadlifts, another great performer for the week. We've actually exceeded rep targets again with 335 pounds for a set of 10, which is again great for such a higher volume amount of deadlifts. Not something I've typically done, especially in the last year or so. I think when I first started training, I was doing high rep deadlifts, and the last couple of years it really went down to 5 or less. So being able to rep out 10 deadlifts at 335 pounds is a good progress, and it's definitely a better start from where we started when this program was happening. Just using regular shoes with higher rep deadlifts, I'm not too worried about what type of shoes I'm wearing, but when we do enter that strength phase, I will be transitioning over to some more minimal shoes, if not barefoot, just to reduce that range of motion.
So that'll wrap up training for the final working week of the Average to Savage 2.0 training program. This won't be the last video. I'll make one final video where I have that overall final rating and review of the program, so be sure to tune in next week so you can see if the Average to Savage 2.0 training program is right for you. Spoiler alert, it is, and you should go out and get it right now. This has been Selling from Wynn Strength, and remember, a better life through strength.